Angela Brooks never thought she'd see the barrel of a gun pointed at her head. At least, not on American soil. Not after everything she had given. Everything she had sacrificed for the very same country now threatening her life. But that's exactly where she found herself. Knees scraping the cracked pavement of a dimly lit parking lot. The metallic chill of steel brushing her temple. And the worst part? The man pressing that gun against her skull wasn't a foreign soldier, wasn't some nameless enemy in a desert war zone. It was a police officer. Here, at home. The story of how Angela got to that moment isn't simple. It's tangled with years of loyalty, betrayal, and the quiet indignities she endured long before that night. So lean in, because what you're about to hear will shake you, and you'll want to stay until the very end. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when the truth bursts open. And before we dive in, don't forget, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. The gun pressed cold against Angela Brooks's temple. Her breath caught, but she refused to blink. The officer's voice was sharp, dripping with a cruel authority. Don't move. Don't you dare move. The street was silent. Neighbors who had once been laughing on porches now stood frozen, their eyes wide, their hands covering mouths that dared not cry out. The children had already been rushed indoors, but the tension of what was happening clung to the block like heavy smoke. Angela, decorated veteran, mother, survivor, stood firm, though every nerve in her body screamed at her to collapse. She'd faced war overseas, but never had she imagined a battlefield like this right here on American soil. And the officer? He didn't know. He didn't know that the woman he thought he was breaking had once patched up wounded soldiers under enemy fire. He didn't know she had a teenage son standing just steps away, his chest heaving, his fists clenched so tightly around a jagged brick that blood trickled down his palm. He didn't know that the next seconds would decide everything. Angela's life, her son's future, the truth about who really held the power in this moment. Because while the cops sneered, convinced he was in control, Malik Brooks was already raising the brick behind him. The weight of rage, fear, and love crashing through his trembling arms. And in the split second before everything changed, Angela closed her eyes. Angela Brooks was not the kind of woman who went looking for trouble. If you passed in a grocery store, you might notice her warm smile before anything else. She was a woman who always helped an elderly neighbor reach the top shelf, the one who made time to ask the cashier how their day was going. Her presence was calm, steady, like a lighthouse guiding others through storms. But beneath that warmth lived resilience few could imagine. Angela had been a medic in the U.S. Army. She enlisted at 19, the same year her father passed away. Duty wasn't just a word for her. It was a calling. In Iraq, she patched up soldiers under heavy fire, her hands steady even as mortars shook the earth. She didn't see herself as a hero. She saw herself as someone who refused to let others die if she could help it. That experience hardened her in ways that weren't visible to most. While her friends back home stressed over college exams or first jobs, Angela was treating men with missing limbs, whispering comfort to boys who cried out for their mothers with their final breaths. She carried those voices with her long after the war. When she returned home, she carried another gift too, her son Malik. Malik was her reason, her anchor, the child who'd been born into uncertainty, but raised in love. She raised him alone after his father left when Malik was 2. Every ounce of discipline, compassion, and courage she was poured into him. She made sure he knew both pride and humility, both strength and tenderness. But Malik also inherited something else, her fire. By 16, he was tall, broad-shouldered, and restless with the kind of energy that made teachers warn. He's smart, but he gets angry fast. Malik didn't get into fights unless someone pushed him first. But when someone disrespected his mother, it lit a fuse that even Angela sometimes struggled to extinguish. Angela tried to shield him from the worst of the world, But how do you shield a black boy in America? She'd tell him the same words every time he left the house. Keep your head up. Speak with respect. But don't let anyone steal your dignity. Still, she worried. There were moments that stayed with her, like the night Malik came home, furious after being stopped by police for walking through his own neighborhood. Or the time he told her, voice shaking, that his teacher had assumed he didn't belong in advanced math. Angela swallowed her rage then. But each time, it chipped away at her faith in the world she'd once fought to protect. And now, here she was, standing on the cracked sidewalk of her own neighborhood, under the shadow of a badge and a gun, her son's life hanging by the thinnest of threads. What people didn't see that day, the people watching from behind curtains and doorways, was everything that led up to this moment. They didn't see the years Angela worked double shifts as a nurse after leaving the army, just to keep a roof over Malik's head. They didn't see the night she fell asleep in her scrubs, exhausted, only to wake up and drive her son to school the next morning. They didn't see the time she bit her tongue when she was disrespected at work, because she couldn't afford to lose her job. They didn't see how much she had already endured. And yet, despite all of it, Angela never stopped believing in Malik's future. She told him he could be anything, a doctor, a teacher, even president. She told him his life had value beyond measure. That's why, on that quiet summer evening, when the officer's gun pressed against her temple, Malik's rage wasn't just teenage impulsiveness. It was the eruption of years of injustice. Years of watching the strongest woman he knew carry the weight of survival. Years of seeing her dignity tested and her safety ignored. And this time he would not stand by. Angela didn't notice the patrol car at first. Her thoughts were wrapped around Malik's future. College brochures stacked on the kitchen counter. The way he lit up when talking about engineering. How determined he was to build things instead of tearing them down. The sharp burst of a police siren cut through her thoughts like a blade. She froze, every muscle tightening as the cruiser rolled slowly behind her, headlights washing over her back. The tires crunched against the loose gravel lining the road. She didn't turn around. Not yet. Keep walking, she whispered to herself. You've done nothing wrong. But she already knew. The way the spotlight followed her steps told her this wasn't routine patrol. The car rolled closer. Then the voice came, crackling through the speaker, amplified and cold. Ma'am, stop where you are. Hands where I can see them. Her stomach dropped. Ma'am. That word was stretched thin with suspicion, not respect. Angela stopped, raising her hand slowly. Fingers spread wide. Her training in the army whispered in her ear, don't escalate. Keep your movements calm. Show them you're not a threat. She turned, her face bathed in the harsh white beam of the spotlight. The officer was already out of the car, hand hovering near his holster. He was young, late 20s maybe, with a jaw set too tight, eyes darting like a man wound too tight by fear or adrenaline. Evening, officer, Angela said softly, forcing her voice to remain steady. Is there a problem? The officer didn't answer right away. He studied her brown skin, the army cap she still wore on her evening walks, the grocery bag hanging from her wrist. His suspicion didn't ease. If anything, his grip on the holster tightened. You live around here? He asked finally. Yes, just 3 blocks down. She nodded in the direction of her street. I'm a veteran. Army. Just got off a shift at the VA hospital. She thought her service might mean something. She thought the patch on her sleeve, the one she left on her jacket out of habit, might ease the tension. It didn't. Step away from the bag. Angela frowned, confused. My groceries? Officer. I. Step. Away. His voice sharpened, slicing the night. His hand was no longer hovering. It was gripping the handle of his weapon. Angela set the bag down slowly, carefully. The oranges inside rolled slightly, bumping against each other with dull thuds. Her pulse pounded. This wasn't training. This wasn't Iraq. This was her hometown street. And yet every nerve in her body screamed the same message she'd felt in combat. This could be it. The officer stepped closer, eyes narrowed. What's in the bag? Food, milk, bread. Nothing else. He didn't check, didn't glance inside. His focus stayed locked on her, as though she might spring forward at any second. Angela could feel the old habits rising. The urge to read every gesture, every twitch, every flick of the eyes. This man wasn't in control. His fear was spilling into his stance, fueling his suspicion. And fearful men with guns. They were more dangerous than the enemies she faced overseas. Turn around. Hands behind your head, he ordered. Angela's breath hitched. Officer, please. I haven't done anything wrong. I live here. My son. Now! The shout echoed down the street. Lights flicked on in a nearby house. A curtain shifted, but no one came out. No one ever did. Angela slowly turned, placing her hands on the back of her head. The cold night air stung her cheeks. T. That's when Malik stepped onto the block. He had been trailing a little behind, earbuds and backpack slung low. When he noticed a patrol car parked crookedly with its lights splashing the street, his stomach tightened. He quickened his pace. Then he saw his mother, frozen, hands laid behind her head, a police officer circling like a predator, deciding when to strike. Something primal lit inside him. He ripped the earbuds out. His heart slammed, so hard it rattled his ribs. "Mom," he called softly. Angela's eyes flicked toward him for just an instant. "Stay back, Malik," she whispered, voice urgent but calm. The officer spun toward the sound, startled. His hand twitched. The gun came free of the holster. Malik froze. He was staring at a firearm aimed directly at his mother's back. Time slowed. Angela felt it too, the world narrowing to the cold steel glinting inches from her skull. She kept her voice low, steady. "Officer, you don't want to do this." "Quiet," he barked, sweat already beating at his temple. His finger hovered on the trigger. Malik's breath shook. His eyes darted around wildly. Anything, and then he saw it. A brick. Old, cracked. Left forgotten near the corner of a torn-up sidewalk. He crouched slowly, pulse hammering, and slipped it into his palm. It was heavy, grounding, solid. His hand shook under its weight. Every muscle screamed, "Don't do it." But another voice, louder, fiercer, roared in his head. "He's going to kill her." Angela heard the faint scrape of Malik's shoe, the soft crunch of gravel as he moved closer. She didn't dare turn her head. She could only whisper, barely audible, "Baby, please don't." The officer didn't hear. His tunnel vision locked solely on Angela, lips curled with a mix of fear and false authority. "Last warning, lady. On the ground. Now." Her knees bent slightly, not from obedience, but from the instinct of a soldier preparing to roll, to move, to survive. Malik's chest heaved. His knuckles whitened around the brick. He raised it above his head. The night air held its breath. The officer's finger twitched against the trigger. Angela closed her eyes, and Malik, trembling, stood behind him. The brick hanging in the air, the entire world suspended in that split second before everything broke. This time, Malik Brooks would act. Malik's arms trembled as the brick hovered in the air. Time slowed the crawl of a nightmare. The officer's finger tightened on the trigger. Angela's voice cut through the chaos, raw, urgent, trembling. "Malik, no." Her words cracked in the night like a breaking branch. For a split second, both men froze, one with a gun, the other with a brick. And then the world snapped. The officer spun, instinctively twisting his body as Malik's arm came down. The brick struck, Not his skull, but his shoulder. A sickening thud echoed in the street. The officer staggered back, the gun firing, a deafening bang that lit up the night like lightning. Angela dropped to the ground, clutching her ears, the smell of gunpowder searing her nose. The bullet had missed her by inches. The officer stumbled, gripping his shoulder. His gun clattered to the pavement. Malik stood there, chest heaving, brick fragments crumbling from his grip. For the first time that night, the arrogant fury in the officer's eyes was gone, replaced with raw shock. But only for a moment. Backup sirens wailed in the distance, and Malik realized he had seconds before this nightmare turned even darker. Angela scrambled toward her son. "Malik, we have to." Blue and red lights rounded the corner, flashing against brick walls and broken pavement. The cavalry was here, but not for them. The officer pointed with his good arm, shouting through gritted teeth. "They attacked me. They tried to kill me." His voice carried the authority of the badge, and in that instant, truth bent under power. Angela's knees buckled. Her mind screamed, "They'll never believe us." Hands yanked her back, cold steel clamping around her wrists. The scrape of handcuffs bit into her skin. Malik lunged forward. Get off her. She didn't do anything. Another officer shoved him hard against a squad car. The brick tumbled from his hand, lost in the gutter. The world blurred with shouts, commands, chaos. Neighbors gathered on porches. Phones out, some recording, some too afraid. But the truth was already spinning, tangled in flashing lights. At the station, Angela sat in a freezing cell, her wrists raw. Malik was kept separate, pacing like a caged lion. Every minute that ticked by was agony. She replayed the moment in her head. The gun, the brick, the bullet. How close it had come. Her son's life, her life, balanced on the edge of a single heartbeat. Hours passed before a weary voice broke the silence. "Mrs. Brooks?" Angela looked up. A young public defender stood there, holding a file that already looked too heavy. "They're considering charges." Angela's chest tightened. What charges? The lawyer hesitated. Assaulting an officer, resisting arrest. Your son attempted murder. The words landed like blows. Angela's body shook with rage and despair. "He saved my life," she cried, voice cracking. "That man had a gun to my head." But the lawyer's eyes carried no comfort, only the weight of battles too often lost. Outside, the city stirred. Word had spread faster than the police report. The videos taken by neighbors had begun circulating online. Clips showed the officer pressing his gun to Angela's head. Another caught Malik lifting the brick. Another captured the gunshot. The story fractured depending on who told it. To some, Angela and Malik were criminals who had attacked the police. To others, they were survivors of brutality, fighting for their lives in a system stacked against them. The lines were drawn, and the storm was only beginning. Angela finally saw Malik the next morning. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight. But when he saw her, he softened. "Mom," his voice cracked. "I thought I lost you." Angela pulled him close through the cold bars. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You saved me. Don't you ever doubt that." But inside, her heart twisted, because she knew what the system saw. Not a hero, but a black boy with a brick. Days turned to weeks. The case made headlines. Cable news hosts debated their lives like pieces on a chessboard. The officer, whose name was released as Sergeant Kyle Mercer, appeared on television, arm in a sling, painting himself as a wounded protector. "Had I not defended myself," he said, "who knows what would have happened? They're lucky no one died." Angela nearly threw the remote across her cell when she saw it. Her lawyer placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is what we're up against." But then, Something unexpected happened. The footage kept spreading. Not the police version, not the edited clips, the full story. And people started asking questions. Why was a decorated veteran treated like a criminal in her own neighborhood? Why was a teenage boy forced to risk his life to protect his mother? Why had the gun been pointed first? Before the brick was ever lifted, the tide was shifting. Slowly, but it was shifting. Angela was released on bail first. Stepping into the sunlight felt like a rebirth, but Malik remained behind bars, his future hanging on a courtroom's decision. Angela pressed her palm against the glass during visiting hours. "I'm not leaving you in here," she whispered. "Not now. Not ever." Malik nodded, though fear flickered in his eyes. "What if they make me out to be a monster, Mom? What if they—" Angela cut him off, her voice steel. "Then we fight harder. We fought for this country. Now we fight for ourselves." But the real twist came weeks later. Angela returned home one night, exhausted, her inbox overflowing with messages. And there it was, an email from an unknown sender. Subject line, "You need to see this." Attached was a file. Surveillance footage. Not from a neighbor's phone, but from the officer's own body cam. Angela's hands shook as she pressed play, and what she saw changed everything. The days after Angela's arrest blurred together. She had been charged with assaulting a police officer, resisting arrest, and a vague public endangerment clause they seemed to pull out of thin air. Malik, though a minor, had narrowly avoided charges thanks to his lawyer arguing heat of the moment and his mother's spotless military record. But the tension weighed heavy. Angela's name, once respected in her neighborhood as Sergeant Brooks, became a lightning rod. Some whispered admiration. She stood up to them. Others shook their heads. You don't win fighting cops. But by the second week, something shifted. At the local community center, a town hall was called. Folding chairs filled the basketball court. Young people, mothers, veterans, even pastors came. The walls echoed with voices of frustration that had been pent up for years. An older veteran stood up, medals pinned on his chest. His voice cracked as he said, "Angela Brooks fought for this country. How dare they put a gun to her head on her own street?" A teenage girl raised her hand timidly. "My brother got stopped last month. They pushed him down. We didn't know who to tell. Mrs. Brooks is the only reason I'm saying this out loud." Angela sat quietly in the corner, Malik beside her. Her instinct was to fade into the background. She had never liked the spotlight, but she realized her neighbors weren't just rallying for her. They were using her case as a mirror to show everything they had endured. By the end of the meeting, a new group was formed, the Brooks Justice Coalition. Flyers were printed. Phone trees were activated. They vowed to attend every court hearing, to stand outside the courthouse with signs, to demand the release of the officer's body cam footage. The first day of Angela's pre-trial hearing felt surreal. The courthouse steps were lined with protesters chanting her name. Justice for Angela. Malik held a sign he painted himself. "My mom is a veteran, not a criminal." Inside the courtroom, the air was thick. The officer who had pressed a gun to Angela's head sat at the prosecution's table, his jaw clenched, his lawyer whispering in his ear. Angela's defense attorney, a sharp woman named Ms. Carter, stood tall, her presence filling the room. When the judge entered, the chants outside could still be faintly heard. The officer shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor," Ms. Carter began, "this case is not just about my client. It's about a pattern. A decorated veteran, a black woman, nearly executed on her own street for questioning a badge. We intend to subpoena the body cam footage. We intend to show this courtroom the truth." The prosecutor objected, but the judge, perhaps sensing the public pressure, allowed a review of the footage. That was the crack in the wall the community needed. That night, Angela lay awake. Malik had fallen asleep on the couch. Curled in a blanket, exhaustion from carrying signs and chanting all day, Angela stared at the ceiling. She wondered if she had become something she never wanted, a symbol. She had just wanted to come home from the grocery store, cook dinner, maybe watch TV. Now, she was the face of a movement she didn't ask for. But as she listened to Malik's breathing, steady and deep, she realized she had no choice. Her son had seen everything. He had seen her on her knees with a gun to her head. He had raised that brick in defense. If she gave up now, what message would that leave him with? She whispered to herself, "I'll carry it. For him. For all of them." 2 weeks later, at the second court session, the judge announced that the body cam footage would be reviewed in chambers. The officer visibly stiffened. Miss Carter smiled faintly, adjusting her glasses. Outside, the crowd was larger than ever. News vans lined the street. Signs filled the air. Release the tape. Justice for Angela. Veteran mother, survivor. Angela sat at the defense table, hands folded tightly, Malik gripping her arm. The judge's gavel struck. We will recess briefly while the court reviews the body cam evidence. The judge said, "This matter is under seal until further determination." The room buzzed with whispers. The officer avoided Angela's gaze. Malik's knuckles whitened as he held her hand. When the court officers carried the sealed laptop into chambers, every soul in that room leaned forward. Minutes ticked by like hours. Finally, the judge returned, face unreadable. He cleared his throat. "Counselors, I have reviewed the footage. There are serious implications here. Due to the gravity of what I have seen, I am ordering this body cam footage unsealed for evidentiary review." The prosecutor jumped up, shouting objections. The officer's face went pale. Ms. Carter leaned over to Angela, whispering, "This is it." The crowd outside roared as the news filtered out. The tape will be shown. But inside, the screen hadn't yet been turned toward the jury or the gallery or Angela herself. No one but the judge knew what it revealed. Angela's heart pounded. Malik held his breath. The laptop lid clicked open. The video loaded. And just as the first frame froze on the courtroom projector, the officer's hand gripping his gun, Angela's face in focus, the judge raised his hand. Court is adjourned until tomorrow. The tape will be presented in full at that time. A collective gasp filled the room. Angela's world froze again. She had faced war zones, but nothing compared to suspended terror of waiting to see the truth revealed to the world. And so part 2 ended, not with a resolution, but with a screen pause in a moment where life and death had nearly split her world in half. The courtroom was silent, heavy, charged like a thunderstorm waiting to break. Angela sat rigid in her chair, Malik's hand folded inside hers. She could feel his pulse, quick, nervous, alive. All eyes turned toward the screen as the prosecutor clicked play. The body cam footage began. At first, it was nothing. The grainy frame of a street, the muffled shuffle of boots. Then, Officer Harding's voice sliced through. Sharp, commanding, dripping with the same disdain Angela remembered in her bones. Out of the car. Now! The jury leaned forward. Angela's face filled the screen. Tired from work, still in her office clothes, her hands raised in calm compliance. Her voice was steady. "Officer, may I ask why I'm being pulled over?" The footage didn't lie. Harding's face twisted with impatience. He stepped closer, his tone escalating while Angela remained poised, her voice respectful but firm. Then came the shove. The courtroom gasped collectively as they watched Angela stumble against the car door, her dignity colliding with cold metal. Malik's voice cracked through the audio. High, trembling but brave. "Leave my mom alone." On the tape, the boy's frame was small but his presence enormous. He clung to Angela's arm, a child's body shielding his mother. Harding's hand reached rough, violent. Too much of the world to deny now. The footage cut to static. For a long moment, no one moved. The silence broke with sound. Angela realized it was her own heartbeat roaring in her ears. When she turned, she saw jurors wide-eyed, saw a woman in the gallery wiping tears, saw Malik looking down at his sneakers, ashamed of nothing but a memory of fear. The prosecutor's voice was low, but thunderous in its certainty. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just misconduct. This is abuse of power. This is racism. This is violence against an unarmed black woman and her child. And it cannot stand. The verdict came days later, but the weight of it stretched like years. Angela and Malik sat side by side again, this time in front of the world's judgment. "Guilty," the foreman said. The officer's jaw tightened. His eyes, once cold and smug, now burned with something else. The realization that the shield of his uniform had finally cracked. Angela didn't cheer. Neither did Malik. They simply held hands, breathing in unison, because justice in America was never whole, never final. But this was something. A door cracked open. A warning that the truth, when dragged into the light, still had power. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, microphones raised like weapons. "Angela, do you feel justice has been served? What do you want people to take away from this?" Angela's voice was calm, measured. "I want people to see what happened to me and to my son, and know that we were not the first. And if nothing changes, we will not be the last. This is not just about one officer. It's about a system that allows people like him to thrive. But today at least, the truth won." Weeks later, the story hadn't died. It had spread. Neighborhood mothers organized marches. Churches held vigils. Local leaders called for deeper reforms. Angela's name became a symbol, though she never asked for it. Malik was hailed as the boy who stood up, though Angela reminded him he was first and always just her child. At first, she resisted. She didn't want cameras. She didn't want speeches. But every time she thought of the footage, of her son's trembling voice, of the thousands of other mothers who didn't get their day in court, she found herself speaking again, in town halls, at community meetings, standing behind microphones with Malik at her side. Not because she wanted to, but because silence had never saved anyone. One night, months after the trial, Angela and Malik sat on their old couch, the house finally quiet. The TV hummed low in the background, news anchors still dissecting the case. Malik leaned against her, his voice soft. "Mom, were you scared?" Angela looked down at him. His eyes were older now, not in years, but in experience. The kind of aging children shouldn't know so soon. "Yes, baby," she admitted. "I was scared every second. But when you held on to me, I wasn't alone. You gave me courage." He frowned. "I didn't do anything." She kissed the top of his head, tears stinging her eyes. "You did everything. You reminded me I was worth fighting for. And you reminded the world that we matter." For the first time in months, Malik smiled. Not the guarded smile of survival, but the free, unburdened smile of a child. Angela let herself exhale, deep and unbroken. Some stories don't end with neat bows. Some leave scars, cracks that never fully heal. But in the home of Angela Johnson and her son Malik, there was something stronger than fear now. There was resilience. There was truth. And there was a quiet, stubborn hope, the kind that whispers to the next generation, "You will not be invisible." Outro. Angela and Malik's story is not just fiction. It is a mirror reflecting the lived reality of countless families across America. A reminder that justice is not given, but fought for, that silence protects the oppressor, while truth gives voice to the oppressed. And sometimes the smallest act of courage, like a boy holding his mother's arm, can echo louder than 1,000 headlines. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it. Speak about it. Stand against injustice wherever you see it. And if you want more stories that uncover the shadows and shine light on hidden truths, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Because together, we keep these stories alive.